Let's start from the last point in the last video, the diversity. Again, there is nothing wrong with diversity. It represents our world, but the problem here is a lot of diversity that doesn't make a sense in the world or reality you work on. Let me be more clear. If you go back 1,000 years, you will not find black people in Europe, Asians in Africa, or whites in Japan. You cannot introduce ethnic diversity into the established lore of a beloved series that was written by a man in a different time and set in a different age long before recorded history because you want it to represent our world today. No one is gonna buy that. Not even the people you are trying to include in your show. You cannot just take a bunch of black people or Asian and throw them into Middle Earth or into another race of magical beings. I think you know what I'm talking about, right? Again, this is not racist or offensive to anyone. I'm not saying that we should not have diversity in movies or TV shows. I know a lot of people suffered a lot in the past and didn't get as many opportunities as they do now. But that doesn't mean you can do it now in everything. Again, this is not racist. Just be patient and I'm going to explain so you can understand. Let's start with The Witcher, where you can't know what happened or where or when, and this mess I don't want really to talk about. This series has the same situation of the Rings of Power. You just take a bunch of black people and throw them to different areas of the fantasy world in the middle of Europe thousands of years ago. Just think about it. You have in the show black elves, and not just them. You find ethnically diverse people in every location. It is not convenient for a world set in a cold climate. Don't get me wrong again. I'm not saying you can't do it. Actually, The Witcher was having a shot at that because it wasn't that hard to introduce them in a proportional way that makes sense for everyone. Like they can produce an ethnic group of black people who live somewhere with a proportional climate too, which is so convenient. And don't tell me it doesn't matter because this is so important for the reality of this fantasy. And in the other hand, you have elves who were wandering and running everywhere after human genocided them and deported them from their land. And somehow they made these black people, and I don't need to tell you what is going to happen. So, congratulations, now you have a black elves, and you don't need to show them meeting each other. Just introduce them in that way, and people are gonna understand. We are not stupid. Anyway, this is not what happened with The Witcher. That is why geography is so important in the show. While in The Witcher, you can't know where you are, how much time you need to get somewhere, the rules of this world, or what kind of people are living there. Honestly, I don't want to talk about that. It is already a mess. But let's take a look at how the Game of Thrones was done it in a convenient way, geographically and with ethnic diversity too, in a form where everyone fit in the location they were set in. It was done in a way that made sense for everyone. The showrunners of The Witcher have had the chance to do that too because it is a new show, not a sequel or prequel. Even if the series of the book did not involve black people, it doesn't matter because you just adapt the story and introduce the character as you want. Well, actually, you already did that, but in the wrong way. But you can't do the same with the Rings of Power. You can't involve diversity in this show because it is the prequel of The Lord of the Rings, and black people weren't there. So how do you manage to explain that? What happened to them? How did they disappear? All of them just vanish one time? Again, if you look at the prequel of Games of Thrones, The House of Dragons, Corlys Velaryon is black, while in the book, Fire and the Blood refer to him as having pale skin, and no one complains about this because the black was already involved in the previous show. Aside from that, he showed a good performance. Again, this is not racism. I just remember that I didn't mention it for a couple of lines. Just get my point. If you make a movie in the middle of Africa 1,000 years ago, and most of the characters are Asian, and pretend that they were living there all the time, people will start asking, how the heck is that happened? So obviously, replacing an original character with someone else is completely different without explanation, which is such a stupid and absurd way to include minority. Just imagine making a movie about Nelson Mandela and casting a woman for the role, or casting a white man for Martin Luther King, or an Indian woman for Queen Victoria, and you call it diversity. And just a note, when you do that, isn't that something the liberals in America call it cultural appropriation? It is a mess. That's what we see now in modern movies, especially in the biggest one, like Marvel, who is trying to change the Silver Surfer to a female now, or Captain Marvel is originally a man in the comics. By the way, what happened to the female superhero in the comics? There are a lot of them not yet introduced to the MCU. Why are all of these changes to the original character to fit your political issues? Yeah, maybe you are gonna to tell me this is just a fantasy. Who cares? Yes, but what about Cleopatra or Enauts? And to understand how these changes affect the movies, look to the attention of Marvel in the Endgame about retooling a whole male franchise that was marketed to them. This is a cheap way to appeal to both of genders, and it is not gonna to work because according to the statistics, most of the MCU audience is male. And by doing it in that way, you lose everyone, which reflects the last failures of Disney's movies, especially the Marvels. That's 65% of those who watched the Marvels were male. Even women didn't support that movie, although you try to attract them. Or Star Wars, where the majority again of the audience are male, which is 73%. So obviously that these people will not like replacing or changing the main characters. But on the other hand, the top grossing movie of 2023 was Barbie. Yeah, apparently women will show up to movie that represents and is marketed to them. And imagine if they cast a male for Barbie. Honestly, you can't imagine that, right? No one is going to watch that crap. Neither women nor men. Well, you can apply that to black people too. Before they were talented, they deserved to get every moment there. But now you feel like they are just there for diversity. Or like Candace said before, and I quote, or you can watch the clip actually.
In the 90s, when I used to watch a commercial and I'd see a black person or watch a movie, I see a black person, I just thought, this person is talented. Give me Denzel Washington. He is quite literally my favorite actor ever. I love Denzel Washington. Give me Morgan Freeman. There's no person that I want more to narrate my funeral than Morgan Freeman. Unbelievable talent. That's what I always thought growing up. They deserve to be there because they're talented, not because of the color of their skin. Now, when I see a black person on the screen, I think, okay, that was the DEI. That was diversity, equity, inclusion. They probably were just given this role. Now they got to put one gay person, one trans person, one black person, one Hispanic person, just to mark themselves safe from being a racist.
Oh, Candice, why do people like you start disappearing from our world? Again, like Emily, she has a point. Yeah, diversity was not a part of Hollywood policy before. Minorities were off screen for a period of time. That was a dark one, right? Yeah, they deserve compensation and fair opportunities, but you don't do it by giving them other people's opportunities. Why do I have a problem with these changes? Because it is humiliating to black people or women before the white people. You literally tell the black people that your character will never succeed unless it depends on the characters of others. While black history or African history in general is very rich with a lot of characters, just waiting for someone to pick them up and give them the chance to show up on the big screen. I would love to watch a movie about these characters, like okay, if you want some rich king in Africa who ruled Mali Empire, then you get Mansa Musa. The man was the richest in the whole history, and no one reached his wealth until now. According to Forbes, his net worth is estimated about $400 billion. The guy literally had two Elon Musks in his pocket. By the way, that article was published in 9 years ago, before the inflation. If you calculate it now, you can add Bill Gates to his pocket too. You don't want a rich king of an empire nobody has heard of before. You want a black king who ruled a historical country in Africa known to everyone, like Egypt. Then you get Abu al-Mist Kafur. The guy was a slave who was purchased by the king of Egypt at that time. And after the last death, he became the king and ruled Egypt for 25 years. His story is more convenient and interesting than more like Cleopatra, according to people who want you to believe that. You don't want a boring king, you want some adventure, then you get Mustafa or Estevanico, as the Spanish called it here, the guy who explored Florida and a lot of regions in South America. He was so smart and multilingual, more so than anyone else at that time. You don't want a man's story, maybe you want some strong female character, then you get Fatima bint Madloum, the woman who fought with the Arabs against the Romans. I don't mean she was physically capable of fighting men one-to-one. She was a war planner who outsmarted everyone. She is a good, strong female character. Not good. Actually, she is a perfect because she has all the basis for that. If you read her story, you will find her more interesting than the modern strong female character. By the way, her grandfather was also a war planner. The realistic is so important even in a fantasy world. And this is just the head of the list. Instead of making black people live with the Vikings before 1,000 years ago, you can make an interesting movie about these characters. But no one wants to take that risk and do it instead of making sequels or prequels that are so inclusive of everyone. By the way, if someone from Hollywood wants to adapt these characters, please don't ruin them.